There's been a lot of chatter across social media about how Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 is a total mess and barely constitutes as a game. People are seemingly upset with the gameplay to cutscene ratio, with many stating that the 6-hour title has a major discrepancy in favor of the cinematics. Critical reviews have generally been much higher, and while there are complaints over dated gameplay elements, many are taken with the audio-visual experience and how thoroughly next-generation it feels. The consensus is divided, and there seems to be no reconciling between these two parties. I generally don't like making response articles or videos to current trending topics, but the whole fervor over Hellblade 2 got me thinking about how the idea of video games has morphed over the years. I already made a video detailing my review process, but there is one aspect I bafflingly left out: ratings. When I was still in games media, it always pained me to have to rate a game. There are a lot of titles I played that I wasn't exactly keen on, but could understand how they would appeal to different audiences. In my mind, my review for Killer 7's belated PC port is a perfect example. I don't really enjoy that game, but Suda51's signature style is all over the production, and it brings up some very interesting themes related to the nature of video games. I scored it a 5 out of 10, but highly recommended that people check it out for themselves. In some ways, Hellblade 2 is just like that game. If you were to break things down to determine how much of the experience constitutes gameplay, you would find that a majority of the game's durations leans towards non-interactive cutscenes. Developer Ninja Theory crafted Hellblade 2 as a semi-interactive narrative game instead of an action one. This is similar to the first game, though that seemingly had more gamey bits scattered throughout. I must state that a lot of the negative reaction to Hellblade 2 has been limited to Twitter, as the game's Steam store page boasts a very positive community rating. Even on Metacritic, which is typically a source of review bombing and otherwise unhelpful community reviews, it sits at a respectable 7.4 rating as of the time of this recording. Many people understand that this game isn't trying to be a combat-rich experience with skill trees, different character builds, and overt interaction. This really is a movie where you occasionally press buttons and move the joystick to engage the next segment. How do you rate something like that? For a lot of people, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 will be a mind-blowing experience purely on an audio-visual level. To them, the game might be a 10 out of 10 since it highlights the technology powering it in extreme fidelity. To others, it might be a 1 out of 10, because they are looking for something with far more interactivity and challenge. Why would they want to walk around doing nothing for a few hours, then dispatch foes in a simplistic fashion for 10 minutes before returning to walking? Generally speaking, I don't like games such as this. Sony's first-party output has heavily favored similar design philosophies, and I typically don't look to games to experience a story. Gaming is such a unique way of communicating ideas to the player through interactivity that I feel relying on cutscenes only cheapens the experience. In a lot of ways, putting more of an emphasis on cinematics is almost like the game saying it's a shame to simply be a video game. At the same time, I understand my opinions are not the majority, nor are they unequivocally correct. I don't think I need to recount the entire history of this medium to people, but have we forgotten that PC games in the 80s were often text adventures? Does no one remember when the point-and-click adventure genre was the dominant genre in the early 90s? How about Sega's push for FMV games on the Sega CD that feature even less gameplay than what Hellblade 2 has? I wanted to make this video because it's a thought that has always lingered in my mind when I read some of the reception games get from the general public. People seem to have a very rigid idea of what video games should be. For someone such as myself, Hellblade 2 will never be one of my favorite games. It simply doesn't have enough of what I enjoy for me to call it a masterpiece. I can acknowledge its immense polish and ridiculous technical achievements, but there isn't much else for me to cling to. If I had to rate it, I would probably give it a 6 out of 10. At the same time, I thought Hellblade 2 was very enjoyable, and it felt like I was embarking on a true epic. I do believe all of this could have simply worked as a movie or TV series, but there are some great elements which only video games can do in here. Combat is basic as hell, but when you're fighting a seemingly endless string of foes, the tension ratchets up as you become firmly planted in Senua's boots. When you're exploring the dark caves while trying to outrun monsters, the sense of paranoia becomes more palpable because Senua can die and cause a checkpoint restart. Scary films might be frightening when it comes to certain subjects, but they can never induce a sense of dread quite like video games. Those are the types of aspects I've always wanted to discuss in games criticism. For too long, most reviews have been written and viewed as product guides. People assume reviews can only convey whether something is good or bad, and if it is worth a purchase, rather than seeing that reviews can enlighten you to different perspectives you've never even considered. Even if I'm responding to negative feedback about Hellblade 2, I'm still interested in seeing why people didn't gel with the game. There are way too many reviews that are shockingly myopic on aspects of art, but others genuinely express why Senua Saga didn't suck them in. Even the positive reviews are interesting for a vast number of reasons. Some people are taken with the themes that Hellblade 2's story conveys, while others are marveling over the graphical presentation. Some like the stripped-back approach that harkens back to Dragon's Lair, and others simply wanted to experience a dark, moody story with Norse mythology embedded into it. The wide spread of reactions is fascinating. I shouldn't leave out that some of the negative reaction to Hellblade 2 could be down to Microsoft's decision to release the game as a digital-only title. Microsoft also recently closed a number of fan-favorite studios while boasting about how it cares about gaming as a medium. Ninja Theory did nothing wrong, but releasing a game that doesn't have much in the way of traditional gameplay during one of the Xbox brand's lowest periods was never going to sit well. That's simply bad luck on the studio's part. To wrap this whole thing up, I don't want to imply that people who didn't dig Hellblade 2 aren't smart enough or cultured enough to understand it. As with any artistic medium, your reaction will ultimately come down to a gut feeling. Criticism tries to find a sense of why things work, rather than if they are good or bad. If you played Senua Saga and didn't like it, the game simply wasn't for you. Ninja Theory's decision to focus more on cutscenes than traditional gameplay doesn't mean Hellblade 2 is a bad game, however. Argue all you want about whether it would work in another medium, but video games have changed forms over the years. We're now in an era where Super Mario Bros. Wonder can comfortably rest on your Switch home screen next to the likes of Famicom Detective Club. Those are both video games, but one is very clearly putting an emphasis on action over text. Neither is less deserving of being called a game. Also, for the love of God, stop treating reviews like term papers. That's an incredibly reductive way to view art.